Day 784 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So a bit of a quick video today, so starting off we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 456,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 910 in the past day. Then taking a look at the hardware losses, 3 tanks, 8 APVs, and a fairly measly 13 artillery pieces. But then, before heading directly to the map today, it's worthy of an upfront mention that there has been quite the development related to military aid from the US, as the US House of Representatives is set to vote on April 20 on a series of foreign aid bills for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, despite opposition from some Republican hardline lawmakers. The vote comes as US aid to Ukraine has been stalled for months, leading to setbacks on the battlefield, and so House Speaker Mike Johnson's proposed Ukraine aid bill, you might not have seen that coming, allocates around $61 billion, which includes $28 billion for defense expenses, with funds for new contracts, equipment replacement, and repairs. Interestingly, the bill mandates delivery of long-range ATACMS missiles to Ukraine, unless deemed detrimental to US security interests. But word has it that half of US ATACMS inventory is more or less recently expired officially, but are still very much operationally usable and relevant in the field. And although I generally steer clear of news about anything that may or may not happen, this bill looks like it has a decent chance of passing in upcoming days. Then of course, President Biden has expressed strong support for the aid package, urging swift passage in both the House and the Senate. And so, if successful, Russia is going to quickly feel the necessitation to reorient themselves on the battlefield to much more of a defensive posture. Then move into the map, and in a surprising move that almost looks like a Russian response to the latest news, videos have surfaced online depicting the withdrawal of Russian forces from Nagorno-Karabakh, a contested region between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The Kremlin has confirmed the pullout, with Putin's press secretary, Dmitry Peskov, you know the guy, acknowledging the development. So the Russian military presence in Nagorno-Karabakh was originally slated to remain until 2025, with expectations of staying even longer. However, the unexpected recall of approximately 1,000 soldiers and 24 BTR armored personnel carriers has now begun. And as intimidating as this might look, 24 Russian armored personnel vehicles, they call that just a day's work in Ukraine. Then, in follow-up to yesterday's events at the Jankoy airfield in Crimea, where the destruction of multiple pieces of Russian air defense equipment had occurred, where so far it appears to be somewhat confirmed that the destruction of 4 S400 SAM launchers with 3 radar stations and a control point for air defense equipment and an additional airspace monitoring equipment was destroyed. And not to mention a warehouse full of air defense missiles from close by. And yet, this is not the final number. The losses are still being determined. And reportedly, and as we see here, the AFU released footage of Ukrainian forces launching 6 US-supplied MGM-140 ATACMS tactical ballistic missiles at Jankoy airbase in Russian-occupied Crimea, therefore making it quite the impressive update. And these losses sound somewhat eerily similar to Turkey's purchase of 4 S400 fire units and 192 missiles back in 2017 for $2.5 billion US dollars. Ouch. Of course, there's an even bigger issue than just the cost of these platforms for Russia. It's also the ability to produce them at all or in any meaningful numbers at this late stage of the game, for the cash-strapped and technologically sanctioned country. Of course, Russia can't just walk into its local Best Buy, or as they call it over there, M-Video, to pick up the highly specialized and low-volume produced Western parts needed which, as it turns out, Russia's entire military-industrial complex is something like 90% reliant on Western parts. What a national security blunder that one is. Then briefly headed up further north to the Voronezh Oblast. There we go, as a powerful blast had rocked the Russian city overnight, with eyewitnesses reporting a large column of smoke rising from the affected area. The cause of the blast remains unknown at this time. So, Voronezh, located approximately 500 kilometers south of Moscow, is a significant industrial and transport hub in the southwestern region of Russia, and the region has all too often now been the target of Ukrainian drone attacks, given its proximity to the Ukrainian border and its strategic importance to Russian military operations. Then headed to the Ukrainian map today, as starting off, Ukraine successfully intercepted and neutralized all 13 Shahed drones launched into Ukrainian airspace overnight. Then we'll head to the Donbass today, as the Russian forces made some advances north of Avdiivka, just south and east of Novo-Kalinova, so hanging around right there. But in light of recent US military aid news updates that now has support where it appeared to have no support before, it's likely this could reflect on the battlefield, with Russia looking to make extremely concerted efforts in an attempt to secure more land while they feel that they have the chance still. Sort of a closing down M-video sale, if you will. Then headed up further onto the map, the same basic situation could be said for Ivanivka. Not to be confused with Bakhmut's Ivaniska, so zooming in there. As we saw the Russian forces crossing the grey zone, and I'll just show this on the map, so yesterday's date, and then move into today's, as they appeared to consolidate a little more land. And for the longest time, so many analysts and Russian commentators alike expected or announced that the northern Donbass was going to be the place that Russia would extend its forces' positions at. But it's clear to see that Russia's main objective has been and continues to be the Donbass, for which most of this green area beyond is not. It's the Kharkiv Oblast. Or should I say the Ukrainian liberated Kharkiv Oblast. Then, looking around, a Ukrainian Baba Yaga heavy drone inflicts damage on the Russian heavy flamethrower system known as the TOS-1A. And these short-ranged 6-kilometer TOS-1As don't stand a chance in this war, given the forever changed dynamics of warfare with what would almost feel like swarms of drones everywhere, every day now. Then also in the east, we saw a Russian T-72 tank simply disappear after an FPV drone attack. Plus, I happened to find the exact frame where we could see the turret toss as well. Also notice the recon drone's UI interface, with some notation in English, stated a strong wind advisory warning, it seems, telling the operator to lower altitude and fly back home straight away. That's a nice touch. Then we saw hits from a French-provided AASM-250 Hammer high-precision air-launched and guided munition performed on locations in the occupied Soledar region around the Bakhmut area. Typically, these hammers provide a range of about 60 kilometers or thereabouts 38 miles, and we see it more and more happening now, which means Ukraine's air force appears to be getting a bit more comfortable with getting within closer range to perform these sortie runs now. Well, there's that, and France gives Ukraine a steady supply of these hammers every month now too. Then somewhere else in the east, because I know you guys like some of the money shots, so here's an example of a Russian T-90S tank getting a direct hit from an AFU FPV. And I say T-90S because the S signifies the export variant, which is worth $4.3 million. And in fairly classic Russian style, they're ripping off from their own military export market, which in effect causes them to demolish their own arms export industry. And I technically do mean demolish. Then headed across to some news today as part of a shorter video. So for this piece, Ukraine, for the first time, will produce 10 NATO standard 155mm self-propelled bow-down vehicles in the space of a month, as advertised by Zelensky. He also stated that the share of Ukraine's own production is constantly growing and that the state concludes serious long-term contracts with Ukrainian enterprises, which provides predictability, the opportunity to recruit people, and attract investments. Then in some other news, the United States and the United Kingdom have prohibited metal trading exchanges from accepting new aluminum, copper, and nickel produced by Russia, while also barring the import of these metals into their respective countries. The move aims to disrupt Russian export revenue amid the ongoing invasion of Ukraine. And as a major producer of aluminum, copper, and nickel, Russia is likely to feel the impact of these targeted sanctions. Also noting that US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen emphasized the targeted and responsible nature of the sanctions aimed at reducing Russia's earnings while minimizing unwanted spillover effects on partners and allies. And so, as a result, these new sanctions have put nearly 40% of sales at Russia's largest aluminum producers at risk. Then headed across to another Russian military mobilization blunder segment today, guys. So the families of mobilized Russian soldiers from the notorious 114th quote-unquote meat brigade, as they call it, are appealing to President Vladimir Putin to investigate their dire circumstances. In a desperate plea, the relatives revealed that the brigade is forcibly transferring troops from territorial defense units and deploying them in quote-unquote meat assaults, resulting in catastrophic casualties amounting to half of the personnel. And so the desperate call for action highlights the urgent need for accountability and reform within the Russian military structure to prevent further senseless loss of life and to protect the rights and well-beings of those forced to serve under such harrowing conditions. Also, you may have noticed how the Russian MOD once again promised the Russian men that they would be territorial defense units, only to switch them out to frontliners once they make it to their positions. The old bait and switch tactic. So you see, the Russian war machine doesn't just only not care for Ukrainians, but also very shamefully doesn't give a flying hoot about their own either. What an all too common story. Then to move to something contrastingly a bit lighter for a moment, here we see a Ukrainian soldier coming home to just the most ecstatically happy puppy that you've probably seen in a while. Check out that little ankle biter. Then headed across to a quick funny to round it all off today, guys. So this one's about the occurrence of a Siberian man receiving a call from Putin and Lukashenko from far, far away in the land of disconnect that I like to call the Kremlin. The only problem is, when asked later, how was your chat with the president? The man replied, I didn't chat with the president, I only chat with Lukashenko. So that was a failed and televised event in an attempt to show Putin's connection with the Far East Siberian lands. It's also a bit of a tone-deaf event, considering all the flooding going on just nearby. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like and comment and subscribe if not already. I would always appreciate those sorts of things. And yeah, do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.